I want to thank you in advance for tuning in with me for just a few moments. To our hyphen students, I want to take a minute and talk to you, but if anybody else is watching, I pray that you can glean something from this as well. Very quickly, I want to bring to your attention to the book of 2 Timothy chapter 3. It should be a very familiar passage of Scripture, and I think it's going to be very relevant for this day that we're in, but probably for a different reason than you might realize. Now, for the sake of clarity, I'm going to be reading from the English Revised Version, and here's how it goes. But know this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty. For men shall be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, traitors, headstrong, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. And it's right here that I want to draw your attention to. Holding a form of godliness, but having denied the power thereof, from these also turn away. Now, we are indeed seeing these times right now, but it's that last part that I want to bring your attention to. Holding a form of godliness, but having denied the power thereof. So I want to talk to you for a few moments about vaccinations. The subject of vaccinations has been a source of some controversy for some through the years, with some for and some against. And regardless of which side of the fence that you fall on, it's hard to deny the effectiveness of vaccinations whenever we are seeing the impact that not having a viable one is having on our society right now. And regardless of whether or not you believe in the seriousness of the matter, you cannot deny the influence that this coronavirus is having all across the world. Future generations are going to read about these days in history books. The Olympic Games that have taken place every 4 years without fail, with the exception of 3 times when they got canceled during world wars, they're going to have an asterisk beside them to note why they took place in 2021 and not in 2020 like they should have. For the first time in its 258-year history, New York, their St. Patrick's Day parade has been canceled. We're living out pages in future history books, and the consequences of the day have yet to come to fruition. It is very possible that the lack of a viable vaccination for this strain of this virus has altered the course of our future in ways that we may not even realize yet. And it is because we did not have a vaccination to build our immune system. This thing has the potential to spread like wildfire, unchallenged, unchecked. Now, a vaccination is where you are injected with something in order to stimulate or activate your immune system. And as is the case with the flu vaccine, for instance, you are injected with something that's much less effective than the real actual thing. If I may simplify, they'll use a part of the flu, like the outer coat protein of the virus, but not the whole thing at its full strength. You get a form of it, but not the fullness. And so if your body can be introduced to a part, but not the whole, you'll have time to build up an immunity to the real thing. That way, whenever you do meet the real deal, your body is already prepared to handle it, so the spread is stopped. It's curbed. But what happens when the vaccination doesn't exist? Well, you're seeing history repeat itself right now. Remember smallpox? Not really, but I know that you've probably heard of it. During the 20th century, it's estimated that smallpox killed 300 million people, with some estimations going closer to 500 million. But thanks to vaccinations, smallpox has been completely eradicated, and a number of other diseases have come extremely close to extinction as well. But no vaccinations exist for COVID-19. And so here we are, quarantined, practicing social distancing, our economy on life support. The world has hit the pause button on life as we know it, and we are rethinking how to do church to accommodate our current situation. Drive-through church and online worship. And as nice as it is that we have found ways to still get the word out, I've got to say that this isn't what we had in mind whenever us preachers told you that we need to take the gospel beyond the 4 walls of the church. I think that it's great that you're having church in your house and you've gotten Jesus in your home. But shouldn't he have been there to begin with? I love the creativity behind making church more available to everybody, but this is not the future. Because the more the church becomes convenient for you, the more it will become an inconvenience to you. What do I mean? Take this video, for instance. In the grand scheme of things, it's not going to be a long video, but how many of you are actually going to watch it to the end when we have so many other things that are vying for our attention? It isn't hard to imagine us tuning out church whenever we have so many other things to do, but the idea of rethinking church, maybe it's not such a bad idea. Because see, we've been blessed to get a glimpse of life without the assembling together of ourselves as Paul describes the church. And now we have an opportunity to reshape what our idea of church is because we've seen what our lives look like without it. And so why not take this time and think about what church looks like in the future for you? Because I can tell you what it looked like in the past for many of us, and it isn't a pretty thing. Because I think for a lot of people, it didn't bother the enemy that you went to church before because you weren't a participant. And the fact that you weren't involved made it that much better because you were vaccinated with church. You got a form of godliness, but not the fullness. You got introduced to a shell of what the church should be, but what it really was didn't match what it could be. We've been vaccinated with watered down religion and routine. What we labeled revival might have been what our country's leaders are calling flattening the curve as it relates to this current virus we're dealing with. Because without vaccinations, this thing should spread like wildfire. This virus is impacting the world because the world hasn't developed its immunity to it. Can you imagine what the future of the church would be with that same potential? Now, I know that you miss church. I do. We all do. I know that you miss everybody, and I do too. I've seen memes and funny video clips about how we're going to be whenever the church finally does open its doors to everybody again. But going back to church, excited when the quarantine is lifted, should not be a joke. It should be reality. And that reality should be the new norm. We have an opportunity to reset, reboot, rethink what church was, and start realizing what church should be. A vaccination can eradicate the spread, and watered down religion and routine can kill revival across the world. But what if, when those doors to the church are reopened, we refused vaccination and we decided that we wanted to let this thing spread like wildfire? We have an opportunity to rethink the future of the church. And it will never be easier than it is right now to make that dream become a reality. Set the precedent for the future. Establish a new standard. On your first Sunday back, what are you going to make the new normal?